Art therapy is the practice of using art as a language to help people in some aspect of their life. Art therapy is a relatively new practice that has become increasingly popular. But does it really change lives and help people heal in mental health?
I tell people who don't know anything about art therapy, I ask them, have you ever tried to describe a nightmare to someone? And typically, if you've had that experience, you feel kind of awkward at times, like, I don't know if I'm describing the intensity I felt. I don't know if you're really understanding what it looked like. Sometimes art can capture some of that intensity in a way that it's hard to find words for. And so I've seen that over and over again in people's lives. I've seen them make just incredible progress. I am a licensed professional counselor, and I'm a registered art therapist, board certified. And I also supervise people for those credentials. So I supervise for LPC, and I'm an art therapy credentialed supervisor. So I supervise people for that track too. I've been an art therapist for 23 years, I think we did the math a little earlier. And so in that time I've worked with lots of different people in lots of different places. It's just helping them adjust to life issues, stress, struggles. And so anything a counselor or social worker might do, an art therapist can also do. We do a blend of talk therapy and art therapy, but it's using art as a language of self-expression. Well, if you watch children, they use art as expression just naturally. And so we are kind of built that way, but along the lines, a lot of us stop doing it. So it's kind of just tapping into that natural form of self-expression. And I've done a lot of work with people with high trauma. And so, with trauma memories are stored in pictures. They're stored in images in our mind. So to try to put a traumatic experience into words is actually pretty complicated and difficult. Sometimes it can be easier to put that into an image, into that form of expression, to tell the story of what happened or what the continued triggers and struggles are. And so that's kind of how art therapy can find a niche in that work.
When I was young, I had a lot of stress and anxiety, just, growing up, and then, so I always had to try to find a little outlet. And, I like to play sports, things like that, but, sometimes you can't always play sports or go work out or run or walk or something, so I always had to find something else to do in my spare time. So, sometimes I'd, just like little kids would do, or, sit there and color or something on the floor. Well, I would do that when I was younger, but as I got older, I would try to find other things, because my one thing is I like to work with my hands. So when I would find, I'd have something to keep my hands busy. Just having that, when I felt like I was stressed or I would get kind of angry at things, then I would do that to try to help calm myself. And that's pretty much what it is. That's what got me started. I still do that today, especially since we're in college and how stressful it is with work and school and things like that. And so, like I said, there's times you can't really get to the gym or go running or something like that. So I still do that today. I'll find something to work on.
If you go outside in nature and journal, that's artist therapy. If you listen to music and really get lost in it, you can say that's a little more in the music therapy realm. But if we're using art as a really large scope, all of that has a therapeutic. It's just getting in touch with your creativity and just letting it have a positive effect on you. So people who are coloring, people who are journaling, people who are just making things, that's all artist therapy.
For a lot of Native people experience a lot of historical trauma. And so I think a lot of that leads to the anxiety and depression that we have within our people, within our tribe, within our communities. That leads to a lot of negative behaviors. So yeah, I have a lot of drug and alcohol abuse, physical abuse at times for people, and poverty, and then there's just not a lot of self-confidence in it. But one thing I look at with the cultural part of it is when you do the cultural art and stuff like that, it kind of brings you back to that culture that you're missing. Because one thing the government tried to do with Native people is separate them from that. So try to take it's in a way of taking away their identity and who they are, know who they are, and how that plays into their life. We have a lot of artists in our community, so that's what it is. They use that art to help connect. And so for myself, the thing that kind of got me, because I wasn't really big into the language, I tried to learn it, and our language was kind of hard to learn, so I know a little bit here and there. But for me, my connection was with being around my family, being around our community. But one of the things I learned is I played stickball game. So that's what got me more connected to my culture, learning the game, learning how to make the sticks, why to make the sticks, because every tribe has a different way of making the sticks.
Art doesn't follow, there's no like set rules really. It's not meant to be something that you hang up in your living room someday. It might be, but not necessarily. It could be pretty ugly art. It could be, and maybe that has a real benefit. Maybe there was an ugly life experience that resulted in making something kind of frightening or something relatively disturbing, and all of that is fair game. That's all part of the process. So I think sometimes people are like, I'm not an artist. I believe that everybody is, but you don't have to be an artist. Sometimes conjures up some pretty intimidating ideas about what it means to do art. But in art therapy, it's way accepting of all sorts of art forms and all sorts of art levels. And
I've worked with several different people that made stickball sticks, and they all have a different view on it, but that one's kind of one that kind of stuck with me because that's things my uncle would tell me. Because my uncle used to go he would go collect herbs and stuff out in the countryside, so he would make medicine, and so he would talk about that too, how you need to respect things. And so it's just that respect, respect with nature, respect with yourself, and that's part of the culture. But like I said, the sticks, I enjoy making those, and that's what kind of connects me with it. It brings me back to thinking about my uncle and the other people that's been in my life that's taught me things like that about our culture and about our history and things like that.
I'm trained as a talk therapist. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, so sometimes my clients prefer to talk. Sometimes my clients prefer to do art or a combination, and I'm able to do both. I do a lot of collage. I do a lot of like what your life is like today. You might do a collage. What would you like your life to be like? And so they can kind of compare and maybe even find similarities and realize that they're having more of a life that they want to have than they realize. I might have them scribble out feelings and talk about those feelings so that they become more articulate about their inner life and their personal symbolism. So I opened Stuffed Dreams Are Made Of about 2.5 years ago, and part of my purpose for doing that was to just offer to people a way to create, and in a somewhat non-threatening way. And so I find that mixed media and assemblage is a really good way to do that. And so what I've got here is I've got an open studio where people can come in at any time during the day on Thursdays or Saturday afternoons. And I can throw out a theme, but they don't always follow that theme. And then I've got in the back, I've got retro, vintage, and whimsy items that can either inspire them or that they can incorporate into their art. It's really about art as therapy, so that I'm not the therapist in this setting. People are here doing art, which in and of itself is therapeutic. It generates energy, it generates mental skills, it's an avenue for emotional expression, and of course community. Scribbling is really helpful. And part of the reason scribbling is helpful is because it's the first thing that we learn to do. It's the first way we can master our environment. Like when you think about what it takes to be, for a little tiny kiddo to be able to pick up a marker, all that's involved in that, and then to like make a mark on paper, it's like huge. So I always think scribbling is great, and when people are reluctant or fearful about making art, I can always suggest that they look away from the paper while they're scribbling. And then what you can do, which is fun, is then you can look at the scribble and see if you recognize any shapes in it. And you might recognize a vase shape. So then you might add some flowers to it and kind of, or it might turn into kind of a stained glass type image, and then you can color it. And I recommend that you have a variety of colors available, crayons, markers, chalk, you know, a whole slew of things like that. So that can be a pleasure, and it can stimulate all parts of your brain. I like mandalas, which I don't know if you're familiar with mandalas, but that's an ancient word for circle. And whenever we create something that is a circle, we're validating our wholeness, because a circle means wholeness. And Carl Jung, who studied archetypes through lots of different cultures, recognized that cultures that had never had contact with each other used circles to represent the same thing. And so we can draw a circle. It doesn't have to be perfect, and we can design inside of that or design outside of that and validate that we are already whole.
To try art as therapy at home, I decided to do a vision board. So the theme of my board is change. So I have like graduation stuff here because I'm about to graduate college, and a lot of change is about to happen in my life. I have a lot of greenery to kind of symbolize change and growth, and the idea that kind of spring is coming and things are going to be new and different. I have a lot of things that kind of have to do with adventure. So some suitcases, plane, passport, stuff like that, because I am about to move out of the country, and so I'm going to be moving to Santiago, Chile. So I just wanted to represent that, because a vision board is kind of supposed to represent your future and what you're going to be, what you're envisioning for yourself in the future. So I also have some words pinned up here. So new home, growth, hope, new beginning. That also just kind of symbolizes words that I would associate with my future. And what else? I have a couple of crosses because I'll be working with a campus ministry, and my faith is a big part of why I'm going to be doing what I'm going to be doing. I really enjoy doing art as therapy on my own. I find that just taking some time to be creative and take my mind off things is really helpful. And doing my vision board specifically, I found that in the middle of this crazy semester and all the classes I'm trying to take, and while I'm just trying to graduate, it kind of helped to sit down and think about the future. And it was a really good reminder of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that even though school is crazy, it's still very purposeful. And so it was stress relieving, and I have started practicing art as therapy somewhat regularly and have done some different paintings and stuff. And I always just find that just taking some time to kind of step back and focus on something creative is very helpful.
Okay, so for my participation in our art therapy, I decided to do finger painting. I was deciding between that and like actual brush painting, but I thought that like with finger painting it was able to like express my emotions more through my hands, because the brush is kind of like more structured in my mind. But I did a little scene of like green pastures and flowers, because this semester at school has been especially taxing to me, and I always have to remind myself to just like take a second to breathe and to like remember that there's other things besides school. So this was like a really good outlet for me to put that into something that I could see and that I could feel and that I could create. So we've talked a lot about whether or not art therapy does help. I will say before this I hadn't really done anything with art therapy. I just like kind of did it for my own enjoyment, but like looking back on it now, I think I was using it as an outlet for like when things got tough. So for me, it helped a lot relieving stress, because I was focused on doing this and like trying to like be as creative as possible, and I wasn't thinking about things that I'm usually thinking about that like make me feel stressed and make me feel overwhelmed or anxious. So like while I was doing this, it was great to like let my mind focus on stuff that made me happy and like looked great and looked vibrant and like really helped me put something out there that I liked, rather than stuff that made me feel stressed.
So I, for mine, did scribbles in paint marker, and I chose this because after Linda told us that one of the first things we learn how to do in art is scribbling, I thought a lot about that, and it kind of stuck with me, and I decided to take my own take on it, and I wanted to do scribbles myself. I have a lot of stress in my life, so I wanted to express that through my scribbles, and then I colored them in a few of my favorite colors to kind of make a stained glass effect and show that there is light in my anger and I will get through it. I felt like while making this project, in the moment, I wasn't like, okay, this is really taking all my stress away. But when I thought about it afterward, and when I was like working on it later, and when I was like looking at it, I was like, this was a great opportunity to give me something else to focus on than everything that I have to do all the time right now. And so I do think it helped in a way. Like I felt like it gave me just something to take my mind off of everything that I have to do right now. So I did enjoy it, and I would do it again.
So it's so gratifying when you're working with a client and they're like, oh. I worked with a client years ago that had what we called dissociative identity disorder, and that in the old days we called that multiple personality disorder. And she would do art on her own. She'd sometimes do art in the sessions too, but this particular case, she had taken a board that she found and had painted on it. And when she brought it into the session, and it was like, 5 feet tall, and she's carrying it in, as we were processing it, I asked her to stand by the board. She was exactly the same height as the board. And then we turned the board upside down, and one of the paintings that she had done looked about the size of a 4-year-old, which was about the time of her trauma. And so that was kind of a way of acknowledging that all the parts of her were having an opportunity to express. And so a lot of what happens is self-validation. Like, oh, kind of like, I thought I knew that about me, but now I really know that about me. One of my biases is that people always come in with their own answers. They just have to discover them. So I don't have the answers. I consider my clients to be their own experts, but I'm a guide and a facilitator.